Thank you for choosing Minority Alliance Organization meeting today. Our goal for our meetings is to continue to push the envelope on the conversations being discussed regarding minority communities standing as a watchdog on policies being put forth that impact the fight for minority equality. Both Mark and myself have dedicated ourselves to growing this organization and create informational and very beneficial content for our members and other listeners. We hope to keep things that you all find important at the forefront of everything we do and continue to build the best content that we can for you guys. And we want to remind our listeners and other members to like, share, and comment and subscribe to our videos here on YouTube.
Absolutely. Our goal has been always from the beginning to speak to the minority community from the minority perspective and cut through the noise of a lot of the things that are kind of shaped for us from a narrative perspective on the news and on what we're seeing and what's going on with us, to really be able to speak to these issues and highlight things that are going on and keep the focus where it needs to be to institute real change for for our community and for our own daily lives in this struggle for equality. We want to continue to keep that pressure up and keep that focus up, because the things that we've seen over the years and the movements that have come and gone over time, they have not been able to sustain the type of growth that is needed for us to get where we're trying to go. So that, that the feeling and the frustration from that brought people together in 2020 in ways that it hadn't done in decades, if not ever. And, the Minority Alliance organization kind of grew from that. And so we want to continue to push that and continue to bring knowledge and perspective and have some serious thought-provoking discussion and put some facts forth and highlight things that we see that's going on, and continue to highlight positives that we see as well, and make sure that we are putting that information out there for all of our people, and that we put out content that people can share and get out there and keep the discussion going.
Now, during our time from actually creating content for the YouTube and the audience channel there, me and Mark have continued to be in discussion about things we see impacting the minority community in different ways and continue to keep an eye on these things. And one issue that we've been watching over the past 2 months that we've seen a steady rise, especially after the instances last year, we've seen a steady rise of violence going on within our own communities, especially in the sense of gun violence being at its peak currently. Where I know there was a situation in Chicago a while back where we saw 41 individuals shot within a single weekend and things of that nature. Mark, how are these instances we're seeing, like what we saw there in Chicago? I know we spoke about the video and the instance that we saw in Detroit there a while back. um, how are these things that we can have an impact on within our own community?
Well, I mean, starting off, we have to understand that we know that we have a lot of different things that are against us in daily life, right? There is a struggle that is unique to the minority community, where you have pressure from multiple sides. You try to live the exact same dream that every person has, of being able to take care of themselves, take care of their family, to acquire and achieve wealth and status and all these different things. And you have pressures from the outside, and there are so many pressures on the outside that start this fight. And the fight for equality has been going on since the very beginning, since the first slave was brought here on a slave ship, all the way up until today. There's been a constant struggle and a constant fight to get your piece of life, and to be able to have that, and to have the type of pressures from the outside of the community that we have. It is doubly tragic to have enemy forces within the community against itself. And when we see this type of violence, and the incidents that we saw in Chicago and Detroit are just the tip of the iceberg. In 2021, we've seen gigantic spikes in violence across the country, and in these cities, in these urban environments, among people of color. We've seen these situations where if it's Memorial Day weekend. We got Labor Day weekend coming up. We have all these different times, Fourth of July weekend, which I believe would where somebody, one of these incidents that we were talking about actually comes from. And there's so many different things where the answer to these things and to this anger and to this angst has been violence against one another. We have to take care of our own house. And in addition to fighting for what we want and what we believe in and what is, by birthright, you know, a, your shot, your opportunity to be able to live that life, and we can't take it away from one another. We go out, we have our families, we have children, those children have children, and everybody wants the same thing. Nobody starts off wanting to have a child that grows up and joins a gang and kills a couple of people before they get killed themselves before their 21st birthday. Nobody woke up wanting that. So, what it is, what are the things that we are seeing that are continue to perpetuate themselves in our communities? Because, let's make no mistake and let's clear up a myth. Black on black crime is not the issue, right? Because that's just socioeconomic. And then that's just where you live, because more than 80% of white crime is committed by white people, and over 90% of Hispanic crime is committed by Hispanic people. So it's not a black on black issue, right? It's a crime in your community issue. And it comes from several different things. It comes from lack of investment in the community, the sense of hopelessness that perpetuates in that community, lack of employment, lack of proper education and systems in place. It comes from that feeling of hopelessness, and quite frankly, it stems back also to mental health. We have not properly dealt with some of the damage that 2020 did. With losing people, with the loss of jobs and the lockdowns and the change in life structure that so many people went through, and seeing others get sick and seeing others go through these different things. Nothing, there's been no effort to deal with the damage of this. The political climate that we just went through, the situations with the protests from last year, and the political strife that we saw towards the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, and all of these different things that are going on. It is up to the individual in the community, right, to kind of assess for themselves what it is that's important and what we're doing here. We keep seeing these different things, these different elements, and it's not going to be any type of government agency that's going to come to the rescue. There is no magic bullet. There is no magic policy that's going to come down the pipe and kind of lay things out for us and make it easier and make, a young man, a young African American man not pick up a gun. It's not going to make someone not shoot into a crowd of people. It's not going to make someone not steal somebody else's stuff. Only we can do that as individuals in our areas and in our neighborhoods. And the only thing that we can do is we can continue to hold people accountable to being able to bring things into their neighborhood, bring some investments into their neighborhood, to hold politicians to account, to bring different policies and different things to the areas that will bring jobs, that will bring higher education, that will bring programs and systems to keep kids off the street and give them options and give them a sense of something to look towards and look forward to where those inner things, those inner demons that have been perpetuated in the neighborhood for decades aren't the only alternatives for them. That is probably the only way that we're going to be able to see a curb to this type of violence that we're seeing.
Now, on top of that, even speaking on inter-community violence, and how you speak on uh, black on black crime and things of that nature within the community. I was speaking with an older woman from, I believe, Jamaica a while back. I ran into at the store, and she was just asking me a couple questions, and why can't we, work together within our own communities to build these things? Because you have a lot of other minorities in the sense of African Americans or Africans that have moved here and relocated to America, and they are curious as to why we don't have the same intercommunity relations and businesses growing within our own communities that we see within other uh, as when other foreigners move here and create those communities, and they're wondering why, well, why don't African Americans have these things, why don't African Americans stick together? And these are those things that, as you said, perpetuate and lead to uh, the intercommunity violence, where we're not all organized and after the same things, and it's a lot of against one another within our own communities. uh, we're already fighting for these things such as police justice, and we're fighting for uh, criminal uh, criminal justice reform and reparations for certain communities and things of that nature. But we're doing seeing all this within our own communities. How can we ask anyone else for those type of policies to start getting passed if we're not keeping an eye on those policies? Same energy that we're seeing put towards the violence that is occurring, if we turn that energy and actually put it towards having these policies passed and fighting for these policies, at how much could actually be done and change within our communities, so we don't have to worry about, as you said, the level of the poverty and inequality that we see within these communities.
Yeah, we need to understand our outrage. Last year when George Floyd was murdered and when Breonna Taylor was murdered and so many others, we understood that outrage, right? We were able to kind of point and look directly at a police system that's been doing what it's been doing forever. And we're able to kind of channel that outrage into some positive action. Not all of it was positive action, but we were able to channel it into some positive action. A tough question that we need to ask ourselves in the community is, why do we not have that energy for the injustices applied to our community by our community? The old stating that it takes a village, to raise a child. Well, we don't think like that anymore, and we don't have that type of outrage to making sure our children are safe. We don't have the kind of outrage when there is, a shooting in our neighborhood and someone is slain just before they enter the prime years of their life. We don't have those marches for violence in our community. We don't have those marches, those big giant demonstrations to go against the injustices being applied into the community by the community. And I think we can probably start there. And I think that if we are able to kind of understand that, our outrage of the injustice needs to be total. We need equality, not just from those that we look to as leaders. We don't need just equality from the police officers. We also need it to start at the very basic level, which is the right to live and the right to live in your community and the right to pursue your life's ambitions and dreams. And at that point, it'd be much stronger and a much better position to be able to demand from local politicians those very same things, and then to be able to take it up a step and demand it from law enforcement, and take it up another step and demand it from state legislature, and take it up another step to demand it from federal legislature. Like, we got to be able to start somewhere, and we got to be able to get a foothold. And the first place that we can get a foothold is with ourselves. It is that simple. So, when I look at this, I think, the first answer is to understanding that these outrages are not just when a cop does something horrible. We should pay attention to that. We should react to that in the way that we, whatever way we see fit. We should be reacting to it because it is a terrible injustice. But every single kid that we see die, every single person that we see shot, every single, person that gets their life snuffed out, and in these in our cities and in our communities, that's an outrage too, because that's another life gone. And whether it was taken by a drug dealer, whether it was taken by a gangbanger, or whether it was taken by a cop, the life is still taken. And we need to hold that same level of energy and account to all of the injustices that the minority community sees.
And that kind of actually leads into our next topic that we were kind of discussing before, where we were looking at the video of the young man there in Georgia that was assassinated basically by the officers after having his car pinned in. And even with me and you, we got to keep it 100% transparent with the things that we create on this channel. And as I said, granted, these individuals and they kind of get away with it within the media because they use individuals who do may have a background, or they use individuals who may have a history of this or that, and the individual didn't help at that time period by trying to continue to drive away and things of that nature. But we're still seeing these instances occur all over the country where people were being, basically, as I said, he was assassinated by law enforcement within that situation there. Uh, and it seems like, the fight, and as we said, the protesting that people last year were getting upset about and uproar about, we're not seeing that same amount of energy. And that's why these instances will continue to occur, sadly to say, if we don't, nip it in the bud at some point.
Well, I can tell you that, we've seen the lessons from, every person that has fought for minority rights. And we saw their different struggles, we saw their different marches and things like that. Now, what we don't really see, what really doesn't get glorified, is the sheer number of times that they would march, or they would speak on an issue, or they would protest against an issue, and absolutely nothing happens. That's how it works a lot of the time. And they didn't get discouraged. They didn't go find something else to do. They didn't say, well, it really doesn't matter, and just go off and do something else. They kept going at it because you understood that it may be a long life struggle. It may be beyond your lifetime. You may pass away and not see the change that you're looking for, but that doesn't mean that you quit. And when we come to a situation like this, the situation is just as outrageous as any one that we've seen in the last few years. And the reason that I say that is not because this man wasn't breaking the law. He absolutely was. But at what point does law breaking turn into a death sentence when someone else's life is not in danger? I mean, can we hold police to an account on on the most simplest of things? Is that if you're going to use deadly force and you're going to rain bullets down on somebody from multiple different directions, that someone's life actually be in peril before you did that? This person was pinned in by a bunch of different police cars. He's not going anywhere. Whether he rams a few cars or he doesn't, he's not going anywhere. What's wrong with shooting out his tires? There's so many different things that could have been done right there other than empty your clip into him. We saw this last year where, someone was driving away and they got shot in the back of the head. We see this over and over and over again. And, it brings it back to, again, keeping the outrage where it belongs. We need the level of localized police reform, and you're not getting that. That's not going to come down from the White House. We need to understand that. That's not going to come down from the House of Representatives or the Senate. There are some general federal things that happen, but the bottom line is local law is applied locally. It is the city council. It is the police chief. It is the county sheriff. It is, circuit court judges. It is, local legislature and the state senate. It is governor. These are the things. These are the places where we need to look at, because they will apply the rules to which law enforcement handles and does their job. Again, I had made a suggestion, a few months ago that, cops need to be like doctors, and they need to actually pay into an insurance for malpractice. And we need to take away qualified immunity so that if there's a situation like this where the family doesn't come after the state, where it's a state issue and somebody gets a settlement. No, you need to be able to go after the individual. Those individual cops who made the decision to, from several different directions, empty their guns into that car, they need to be held to account. And if you can't hold them to account, legally, then you need to be able to hold them all to account civilly, and and be able to handle business that way. And if we started seeing more of that, we start seeing less of this. If you start seeing more investment, less investment in military grade weaponry and more investment into training and screening of candidates before they become police officers. If you put that money into their salaries and make it a desirable position to where they're not making $35,000, $40,000 a year, and you're actually putting in a position where it's a desired position and it's a community-based position where people from that neighborhood. Imagine if that man was surrounded by people from his community, and is he more or less likely to die? I would say a lot less. And there needs to be that's the type of reform that needs to be taking place, and we're not seeing it. And there is no political price to pay for this. Why? Because again, outrage these days is as fast as the latest TikTok video. It flares up, it gets a bunch of likes, people are mad, and then tomorrow morning something new happens and we'll move on with that. That cannot be good enough. The power structure that allows this type of thing to happen counts on this type of apathy. It counts on this type of low attention span. It counts on this type of low energy response to things, and the disorganization that we have unfortunately given them for far too long. They count on it now. And we have to change that if we plan on changing anything about any of this.
I definitely agree on my end. And I mean, but especially with seeing that video this week, I know a lot of our members who are part of the organization, that's a local area and a local situation. And these things are, as you say, a lot of people don't pay attention to stuff until it's close to home. And when you start seeing people within your own community affected by these incidences and tragedies that do occur, it should make you even more so geared in to the conversation and starting to understand why we need to see these policy changes and why we need to continue to push the narrative that we began last year and not just drop the ball. And we spend all that time and energy starting with the protests, but we need to see these policies fall through on the other end. Rolling into kind of our news of the week, we kind of want to speak on the Atlanta mayoral. Mark, correct me real quick.
Mayoral race?
Mayoral? I can't say shit like that. Mayoral. All right, I'm running back. Getting into our news of the organization this week, we're looking at the Atlanta mayoral race and a couple of the three candidates running there that are the top three candidates, which would be Mayor Kasim Reed, who was a prior candidate within the city of Atlanta. Also, Felicia Moore, who brings a lot of excitement and things this time around to the race, and she brings a sense of a moderate change that we may need within the city. Also, there's Andre Dickens, who has been a council member within Atlanta for a few years here since 2013 and has kind of paid his dues, and he's a true Atlanta native. So we also are looking at him as a strong candidate for the seat there. This is an election that kind of matters in the bigger sense because Atlanta seems to be one of the hubs of African American business and the push for civil rights and equality throughout the whole nation. And that being one of the hubs, this is an actual race that would mean a lot in the way that that ideology is reflected amongst other African American majority cities within the nation. So this is an election that we want to be keeping an eye on, and that we want to remind everybody to go and register before, I believe, October 4th is the end of registration date. And then the actual election will be November of this year on that race there. So we want to make sure that people within that area and our members within that area are keeping an eye on that election.
Absolutely. If it is one thing that I have preached religiously from the very first time we've done a Minority Alliance organization meeting, it is the power of local government. It doesn't get any, it doesn't get any bigger than that, starting from the ground up. And for for the minority community, and a minority community as strong as the one in Atlanta, this is the kind of the first stepping stone towards everything else that we talk about, right? And that is getting the local leadership in line with what the community needs. And for situations like the one we just spoke of, when it comes to actual, getting a hold of, what the police are actually doing in the community and how it's applied and what we're doing there, like these are the type of races where that stuff begins. So, the other thing that I would say, and again, it's a harsh reality, but I will keep it completely honest with everybody, as we'll always do. We did a lot of marches last year for police reform. Did we get it yet? No. They marched for gun reform after that Parkland shooting. Did we get it? No. There were marches for the way that women were treated in certain situations, and did they get change? No. Marches and protests, they look good and they get you a chance to get your voice out and get the anger out, but they change nothing. They change no policy. Votes do that. Elections do that. Swings in the ideology of what a party is doing and what party is in control does that. Policy does that. And if
I
we
mean,
don't do,
more so than anything, Mark, the conversation, being had, period, from the forefront is what actually, execute these things into, falling into place. But if we're not even having these conversations and we're going about, our daily day, doing everything else, totally forgot about 2020, totally forgot about the situations that happened in 2020, then, we never continue to push we never see the things that we started come to fruition on the back end.
no, yeah, you're right on that. But I would also say that we get that the action that is necessary is done in a ballot box. We got to change the paradigm there. And, we will report on these things as we always do. And like I said, I'm not telling anybody not to march. Like I said, it's good. It's a good visual and it's good for the expressionism of dealing with these things. And it's good for the discussion. At the end of the day, if we don't turn out and if Atlanta doesn't turn out and vote and get the mayor that it needs, it'll unfortunately end up getting the one that it deserves. And that's not always good for anyone. And we've seen that in elections everywhere. So it's definitely something that we need to keep up with and make sure we continue to talk about. But we got to make sure we push the envelope, and as many people that can register to vote. If you're 18 now and you haven't done it before, or if you're older and you haven't done it before, this is local. This is your time. Please go out and register to vote and listen to the candidates, listen to the policies, work with, look at what's coming up and what they're talking about doing, and vote for what you feel is best, and then be able to hold them to account for what it is that you're at, what they said they were going to do. It's that simple.
Most definitely. And when we're looking at strongholds of cities that are majority African American and African American government officials that are in those cities, we look at stuff like Chicago, Detroit, and things of that nature. Atlanta is one of our last strongholds of where we're not totally, seeing things be chaotic within these cities. So we got to make sure that, we continue to keep that stronghold for civil rights what it is currently, and the growth and the businesses that we're bringing there and the fruition that we've seen within that city. Kind of speaking on our organizational news and things that we've currently been changing behind the scenes as we took a break from creating content. Me and Mark are currently looking for ways that we can gear our content to being done in a timely manner to where it's most effective. So we may not have, like how we had last year, it's a video every 2 weeks or things of that nature, but wherever we see fit to create certain content that addresses certain things that we need within that time period, or what we're going to do, at least for this next season going forward with the organization. We want to encourage, our members and people who actually listen to our videos on Audius and YouTube to continue spreading the message on equality and the situations going on around us, so that we can continue fighting for, so we can continue the fight against inequality that we have already began. That's where we want to also do a reminder to like and share and subscribe to our podcast meetings and things of that such, and continue to invite people in on what we're trying to create.
Absolutely. I mean, we will, always continue to monitor things, and we will be able to, do what we've always done as far as bringing the information, bringing the truth, and, speaking the truth, even if it's inconvenient, and speaking not just on issues, but speaking on potential solutions, highlighting things that are going on in the community, highlighting, you know, dealing with, our health as a minority, whether it be, mental, physical, financial, political, everything that goes on with that, and being able to bring it to you in a more targeted fashion. Um, you know, we want to be able to engage, and we want to be able to engage with, everyone in, not just that, that's on the page and it's a member, but, be able to solicit something that where our members are able to talk to family members, and our members are able to talk to friends, and continue getting those discussions going, because, we are a community, and, pushing those things out and getting those ideas out there is going to be the best things for moving things forward. So that is definitely going to be our aim, as we continue to struggle for equality, and, continue to push this message forward to everyone.
And I would say, even in the bigger sense, it's a lot of things that get overlooked for people in their day-to-day lives, especially when regarding situations as far as policy that are affecting the minority communities. And these are things that people are not necessarily keeping an eye on the day-to-day. And these are things that me and Mark have continued over the past year plus to keep at the forefront of everything that we do, is to keep an eye on ways that we can make changes and ways we can bring information into the organization and to the minority community, uh, to actually make a difference in these areas. So we do encourage people to actually go check out a lot of our past videos. Uh, and if there is, requests on certain events or certain situations that, we can discuss or talk about that would help within the community, people can always reach us on the Facebook group page, or message us directly on the YouTube, going forward.
Absolutely. We are here again to, not only put out content for, our people, but also to engage with them. We encourage everyone to, bring their ideas, give your opinions, and, see, we can all get together and discuss what's going on, and come up with these solutions, and continue to push this focus forward. So, as we, end our call today, again, we just, encourage everyone to continue to keep an eye out on what's going on in our community, continue to keep an eye out for one another and take care of one another, because, again, without us, what do we have? And we want to continue to push that envelope and make sure that we understand that togetherness is the key to a better tomorrow. So in order for us to get to that better tomorrow, we have to work together.